I've had many ordinary days in my life, days that blur into each other, days where nothing remarkable happens. But sometimes, a single moment, a single sentence, can tear through the fabric of normality and change everything you thought you knew about your life. That's what happened to me. It was a Saturday afternoon, nothing special. I had stopped by a quiet cafe in town, the kind of place where you can sit with a book and disappear for an hour. The smell of roasted coffee beans and pastries filled the air, and the chatter of strangers was nothing more than background noise. I was waiting for my latte when I heard a familiar voice call my name. I turned, and there he was, Mark. An old acquaintance from years back. We weren't close, but we had mutual friends, and our paths had crossed enough times that I knew him. He looked older, a little grayer around the edges, but his grin was the same. We exchanged the usual pleasantries, the surface-level chatter that old friends share when they bump into each other by chance. And then, just as casually as one might ask about the weather, he leaned closer and said, "So, do you remember the last partner swapping?" The words didn't register at first. I actually smiled, thinking maybe I misheard him. But the way he said it, so casual, so matter-of-fact, hit me like a slap. I froze. My smile faded. My stomach dropped as if I had been shoved off a cliff. "What?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Mark looked at me, puzzled. "The last partner swapping. You and Alex didn't come, right?" Alex. My partner. My husband. My everything. I laughed nervously, trying to mask the shock clawing at my chest. I don't know what you're talking about." Mark's expression shifted. He looked at me with the kind of awkwardness you get when you realize you said something you weren't supposed to. He mumbled something about maybe mixing me up with someone else, then quickly excused himself. But it was too late. Those words burned themselves into my brain, the last partner swapping. I sat there in that cafe, coffee untouched, heart pounding, thoughts racing. What did he mean? Was Alex part of something I never knew about? Was my marriage, the life I thought was built on loyalty and trust, a complete lie? I didn't have answers, only questions. And that single sentence planted a seed of doubt that I couldn't unhear, couldn't unfeel. That one sentence ruined the world I thought I knew. For most of my marriage, I would have sworn Alex was the definition of loyalty. He wasn't the type to forget anniversaries or birthdays. He worked hard, paid the bills on time, and always kissed me goodnight before turning out the light. To the outside world, and to me, he was the responsible, steady partner every woman wished for. And me? I built my life around him. I turned down job opportunities that would have required moving to another city because Alex's career seemed more stable. I ignored flirtations at work, declined invitations from single friends who thought I should loosen up. I believed love meant sacrifice, and I was willing to give mine without complaint. That's why Mark's words stung so deeply. Because they didn't just suggest Alex had lied, they suggested my entire devotion had been misplaced. The thing is, Mark wasn't just some random acquaintance. Years ago, he was part of Alex's circle, those friends who always seemed a little too wild for me. They'd drink until dawn, vanish on weekend road trips, and tell stories that trailed off into laughter and inside jokes. I never pried. I never asked Alex what really went on, because I trusted him. I thought, he chose me, he married me, so what could there possibly be to doubt? But the more I replayed Mark's casual question, the more cracks appeared in the story I'd told myself. I started remembering things I had brushed off. The nights Alex came home late, muttering about working overtime even though his shirt smelled faintly of perfume. The weekends he insisted he was with the guys, but his phone stayed off for hours. The hushed phone calls he'd take on the balcony, lowering his voice as if the walls themselves weren't trustworthy. At the time, I ignored it all. I told myself love was about trust, not suspicion. I told myself that marriage wasn't supposed to feel like a police interrogation, and that if I doubted him, it said more about me than him. But after that cafe encounter, every memory felt poisoned. I couldn't unhear the phrase partner swapping. It looped in my head like a broken record. I pictured Alex with strangers, laughing, touching, betraying me in the most humiliating way imaginable. I pictured myself at home, folding laundry or planning our next vacation, while he lived a life I knew nothing about. The seed of doubt Mark planted grew quickly, choking everything else. For the first time, I started to wonder if I had been nothing more than a convenient cover, someone to play the part of the devoted spouse while Alex indulged in secrets I wasn't meant to uncover. And once that thought took root, there was no going back. I tried to push Mark's words out of my head. I told myself it was probably a misunderstanding, a slip of the tongue, maybe even some cruel inside joke I wasn't meant to hear. But the truth has a way of clawing back to the surface, no matter how deep you try to bury it. One night, as Alex and I sat at dinner, I decided to test the waters. I stirred my food slowly and asked, almost casually, "Hey, do you remember a guy named Mark? I ran into him the other day." Alex barely looked up from his plate. "Yeah, I remember him." "Why?" I forced a smile. "He said something weird. He mentioned partner swapping." For a moment, Alex froze. His fork hovered in the air, just a fraction too long. Then he laughed. A forced, sharp laugh. "Mark's always been an idiot. Don't tell me you take anything he says seriously." But my heart caught that hesitation, that flicker in his eyes. I pressed on. "So it's not true? You've never..." Before I could finish, his tone hardened. "Are you seriously asking me this? After everything? God, you sound paranoid. Maybe you should talk to someone if you're going to start inventing stories about me." His anger rolled over me like a storm, but beneath it, I sensed something else, guilt. It was outrage laced with panic, as though the walls he'd built around his secrets were starting to crumble. That night, while Alex slept beside me, I couldn't rest. My hands shook as I picked up his phone. I had never invaded his privacy before, but the seed of doubt had grown into something I could no longer contain. The first thing I found was a locked folder of messages. My stomach turned as I managed to open it. Dozens of conversations scrolled past my eyes, coded invitations, group chats full of people making plans for gatherings, mixers, and rotations. Some even included explicit jokes that made my skin crawl. It wasn't just cheating, it was deliberate. Organized. A lifestyle I had never consented to, one I never even knew existed within my marriage. I felt sick. Betrayed. Humiliated. For years, I had believed I was his one and only, the person he built a home with. Instead, I was the fool, the cover story, the loyal spouse while he indulged in a hidden life of secrets. I stared at him while he slept peacefully, wondering how many times those lips had kissed me after kissing someone else. The next morning, I confronted him. My voice shook, but my words were sharp. "I know, Alex. I saw the messages." His face went pale, then hardened into something cruel. "So what? You went through my phone. You don't trust me. Maybe you're the one with the problem." The fight that followed shattered something between us. His denial, his anger, his twisted attempt to turn blame onto me, it all broke the fragile thread of trust that had kept us tied together. I knew then, I couldn't live in denial anymore. This wasn't the marriage I thought I had. This was a lie I could no longer stomach. The days that followed felt like living in a storm without shelter. Word spread faster than I could have imagined. At first, I thought maybe it would remain a private matter between Alex and me, something ugly we would wrestle with behind closed doors. But secrets don't stay hidden forever, especially when they involve more people than just the two of us. It started with whispers. Friends who had once smiled warmly at me now gave me looks of pity or discomfort. Some even avoided eye contact altogether. I learned later that a few of them already knew, or at least suspected, that Alex had been involved in that hidden lifestyle. The fact that I hadn't known made me the punchline of their silence. Family was divided. My sister was furious, calling Alex a liar and a fraud. My mother, on the other hand, urged me to be mature and try to work through it, as if betrayal of this magnitude was something you could patch up with counseling and forgiveness. As if my dignity was less important than preserving the image of a marriage. The shame burned deep. I avoided gatherings, skipped phone calls, and retreated into myself. I couldn't stand the thought of people whispering about me, of them picturing Alex with other women, and maybe even men, while I played the fool at home. In the quiet of my isolation, the memories came flooding back. All the late nights, the excuses, the subtle signs I had brushed off. Each one now felt like a warning I had been too blind, or too trusting, to see. I replayed them over and over until the self-blame ate at me. Was I too naive? Too willing to believe in love? But slowly, that shame transformed into something else. A spark of anger. Why was I the one hiding, shrinking, carrying the weight of his betrayal? Why was I the one feeling like a victim when Alex was the one who built our life on lies? I realized then that I couldn't stay silent. If betrayal had destroyed me, then truth would rebuild me. If Alex had stripped me of my dignity, then I would take back my power, not by pretending this hadn't happened, but by making sure he couldn't hide behind me anymore. I was done being the fool. I was ready to become the reckoning. Once the anger took root, I knew I couldn't just sit in silence. If Alex thought his secrets could stay buried, then he underestimated me. I started digging, carefully, methodically. Every night after he fell asleep, I combed through his emails, hidden folders, and old cloud backups he must have forgotten were synced. And what I found made my blood run cold. It wasn't a single mistake, a one-time lapse in judgment. No, this was an entire network. Messages, invitations, even spreadsheets of events. My husband hadn't stumbled into this life. He was an active, consistent participant. The partner swapping wasn't a rumor. It was organized, deliberate, and horrifyingly regular. But the real dagger came when I recognized a name. Not just any name. My best friend, Sophie. The same Sophie who held my hand through heartbreaks, who stood beside me at my wedding, who I trusted with every secret I thought mattered. There she was, laughing in group messages, sending suggestive jokes, arranging nights where my husband was just one of many. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, my heart splitting in two directions, grief for the betrayal, rage for the audacity. It wasn't just Alex who lied to me. My closest confidant had been part of his hidden life all along. It was betrayal layered upon betrayal. But strangely, I didn't cry this time. Something inside me had snapped into focus. I knew what I had to do. I gathered everything, screenshots, emails, names, dates. I put them neatly into a folder, every secret they thought they had buried now stacked like weapons in my hand. And then I waited for the right moment. It came quicker than I expected. A family dinner, one of those occasions where Alex insisted we show up smiling, pretending everything was fine. My parents, his co-workers, even Sophie were there. Perfect. Halfway through the evening, while Alex was basking in the praise of being the perfect husband, I stood up. My hands trembled, but my voice was steady. Since we're all here, I said, pulling out my phone, I think it's time you all see the real Alex. The room went silent. One by one, I projected the screenshots. The chats. The photos. The undeniable evidence of a life built on lies. Gasps filled the air. My father looked away in disgust. My mother shook her head, speechless. His co-workers stared, horrified. And Sophie, my so-called friend, turned pale as her name lit up the screen. Alex tried to protest, shouting that I had twisted things, that it wasn't what it looked like. But no one believed him. The truth was too clear. His mask shattered, and with it, the perfect image he had guarded so carefully. I stood there, watching the man who once held my entire heart crumble in front of everyone. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. In the weeks that followed, I felt like I was walking through the ashes of a life I no longer recognized. Everywhere I went, people whispered. Not about me this time, but about Alex. His carefully built reputation, the image of a reliable husband and respectable man, had collapsed overnight. At work, he became a joke, at family gatherings, an outcast. Even the friends who once laughed with him at those secret parties now avoided him, afraid of being dragged down with him. That was his karma, not some grand act of punishment, but the simple, brutal truth finally catching up with him. And me? I was left scarred. I won't pretend otherwise. Betrayal doesn't just bruise you, it rewires the way you see the world. I looked in the mirror and no longer recognized the trusting, naive woman I once was. Part of me mourned her. Part of me was glad she was gone. Because silence would have destroyed me more than his betrayal ever could. If I had kept his secret, if I had swallowed the humiliation and kept playing the devoted spouse, I would have been complicit in my own erasure. Revenge wasn't about cruelty, it was about reclaiming my dignity. It was about standing up in a room full of people and saying, "This is the truth. And I will no longer carry the weight of his lies." Was it messy? Yes. Did it hurt? God, more than I can explain. But it also freed me. For the first time in years, I could breathe without wondering what else he was hiding. I could sleep without fearing the sound of his phone buzzing in the middle of the night. Love without honesty isn't love, it's a performance. And I finally understood that the man I loved had only ever been acting. He played the role of a husband, while keeping his true self hidden behind closed doors. But the truth always comes out. No matter how many lies you bury it under, no matter how carefully you curate the mask you wear, sooner or later, the cracks will spread, and the world will see what's underneath. I may never be the same after what Alex did, but I refuse to let his betrayal define me. I walked through fire, and I came out burned, but standing. Stronger, sharper, and unwilling to ever settle for less than honesty again. So I leave you with this: if you found out the person you loved most lived a secret life, would you forgive, or would you walk away forever?